In 2020, we are faced with a digital age where the algorithms that are in play on our devices are creating what is coined as the social dilemma in the latest Netflix film of 2020 that documents the cookies that exist within our digital footprints that track our every move. And this is one of the main issues that we'll be discussing as we move forward. So this video is to discuss the tracking and of the chaos and the disruption, if you will, with a little bit of history of our digital revolution that we face today. The rise of the internet, in addition to some convergence issues related to old media and new media, and also some conflicts over digital media is what will be discussed today. So moving right into some history related to our digital era and the developments of the internet. The birth of the web was actually created by the what is known as the ARPA Net, which stands for the Advanced Research Projects Agency, which is a branch of the Department of Defense. And it enables the military personnel and also eventually the academic personnel to share information and have this sort of communication authority. And as we move forward in thinking about the development of radio, which was an advancement for the World War efforts to communicate with naval ships overseas and through the harbors and so forth, that really allowed us to create that advantage that we needed at that time. So what we're seeing is a pattern of development of new technologies that is in some way funded and supported by our federal government for the use of for wartime, for wartime purposes, and for use of communicating with one another. So this particular effort of the internet dives into some of the networking that is at play here and the different types of networks that we began with, such as a mainframe and having a more centralized computer mainframe that would branch out into different parts of the network itself. But essentially, what the internet provides us is more of a sort of decentralized and holistic point of view of how to run our networks. And so this allowed for the development of a distributed network, as you see there in the center, which would then provide a way to, if we were ever attacked by a nuclear weapon, that our computer systems and our grid would still be able to function outside of a centralized system as we used to have. So the military personnel as well as the academic community had the first set networks of the internet in the 1960s and well into the 1970s, such as Stanford University, UCLA, and University of Utah, Salt Lake, which sent the first communication, the first email communications, as we study in this particular history. That this is how the internet was born, was through these very first networks. So knowing that it was intended for military and then academic use, eventually came the commercial use of this. And Tim Berners-Lee is responsible for creating a more user-friendly version of the web without necessarily having to know code. Web developers could come in and be able to use software a lot more easily, of course. And it allows for personal computers to be able to read the binary code that was established with the digital era. And so it was the first time that it allowed for different operating systems as well, like Apple and Microsoft, to come together into a way to communicate with each other using the HTML that Tim Berners-Lee created. So the web page was born in the late 80s, and then we have the way to navigate through, which the Mosaic was the first web-based window browser. Eventually, and this was in 93, eventually in 95, we start to see the proliferation of these tools, these software technologies such as Windows, and then Windows 95, allowing more people to come into and develop websites a little bit more easily as we maneuver into the new millennium. And then in 2001, as the web began to become more popular and more people were getting online, America Online, which was the leading service provider, eventually merged with the old world of television broadcasting and Time Warner. And so in 2001, this was one of the biggest mergers that came out of the 1996 Telecommunications Act, where the television broadcasting company, in this case, the cable company, Time Warner, was allowed to expand beyond just television ownership and television networks into the internet. So that was pretty iconic because it then created this spiral of what we consider to be sort of a disruption era in different mediums. So with Napster coming along, and then eventually LimeWire and several other of these host sites, where they eventually got their hands on you know multiple MP3 files, and then eventually creating the client to be able to do that. You had a lot of disruption with the RIAA, which is the Recording Industry Association of America, and then more disruption in the television medium, with the older medium now, with the new streaming apps, is what creates the disruption here, with the large networks trying to stay afloat and trying to stay relevant with the birth of the new streaming apps that we now have. And then also Netflix, the biggest disruptor of Hollywood lately, with the production of their own movies, their own content, and then facilitating that straight to the streaming platform that they own, and circumventing the sort of Hollywood model that's been in play for almost a century now. So the internet has also brought disruption from a global standpoint, a sociological standpoint, such as the Arab Spring, as we saw began in 2011 in Tunisia. And then, of course, we're currently in the Black Lives Matter movement, and then the Me Too movement back in 2016, 17, with the disclosure of a lot of misbehaviors, if you will, leading with some of the Hollywood producers, such as Harvey Weinstein. And so this kind of creates this hashtag activism, but also incorporates several social movements that are now on display, because we have the ability to send back information and be our own content creators, and vie for more transparency in our society. And it also leads into some other aspects of conglomeration in terms of business conglomeration. Google now has a pretty strong, steadfast hold on the users of the web, which in this case, 91.8% of global searches are done by Google or through the Google search engine. And so they are indeed a monster when it comes to converging into the biggest web search engine in the world. And then this is just a slight interesting slide here about ownership and controlling of the web. As you see now, the big players in the game in 2017, Apple, Alphabet, which is the parent company of Google, and then Microsoft and Amazon. In addition to that, Facebook and several other known brands that you see here. And then this is kind of a shift between, whereas in the past we had more, steel, lumber, and a lot more of the industrial era, which has now shifted into the information revolution here. So a few other issues that have come to rise here, and now that we've looked at some of the history, and then and of course some of the convergence of old media and new media brings about the issues related to conflicts over digital media. So privacy being one of those. In 2016, the election and the revelations of Edward Snowden back in 2013, the U.S. Patriot Act after 9/11 creates this environment where people are more, interested in learning about their privacy, and how companies therefore shape their their information and how they sell it. So, and this is kind of an interesting set of issues that are now being dealt with, such as targeted advertising and data mining. In addition to that, the Cambridge Analytica revelations of the 2016 election and how Facebook worked with Cambridge Analytica, a researcher there, to discover more about the U.S. voter in an effort to target them more aggressively. So, with that said, there is a lot of issues. There's so much going on with the digital era that the social dilemma really does discuss a lot in regards to this, related to surveillance, our privacy. In particular, it's sort of the corporate surveillance now, in addition to government surveillance, that is now part of this discussion and part of the dialogue that is going to continue on in this digital revolution. So, went over a brief history of how we got here today. What are some of the issues that we see, and then also some of the things that have really characterized our digital era in a way that allows us to, share our own messages together with each other, and use the social platform for good, knowing that there's a lot of things about the current day and age that we probably need to be aware of and take action upon to make this a digital space that that is more conducive to educating one another, and spreading the good news versus just focusing on the risky things and the bad things. All right, that's it. Have a good one.